exchange, to have a dialogue.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Trump says Venezuela will turn over 50 million barrels of oil. US crude futures fell 1.3% to $56.39 per barrel after the announcement. White House says US discusses range of options to acquire Greenland, including the use of military. Officials say the suspect in Brown University shooting confessed in a series of videos. A suspect planned attack for a long time. Israel and Syria agreed to a dedicated communication hotline to share intelligence and prevent military escalation. A Saudi-led coalition says that it had undertaken limited preemptive strikes in Yemen to stop UAE-backed secessionists from escalating the conflict. Indian scientists discovered a new snake species in Mizoram. The snake is called Calamaria mizoramensis, named after the state that it comes from. China is reviewing Meta's $2 billion purchase of AI firm Manus over possible technology export control issues, a move that could give Beijing leverage over the deal. NVIDIA CEO confirms that China won't make any formal announcement about approving imports of NVIDIA's H200 chips. Alright viewers, let's start now with the top focus story in this bulletin. Now, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has urged the United States to ensure that deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro receives a fair trial. Maduro appeared in a New York court on Monday, pleading not guilty to drug trafficking and other charges just days after being captured by US forces in Caracas. Venezuelan Attorney General Tarek Saab has called on the US judge to recognize Maduro's immunity as a head of state and argued that the court lacks jurisdiction. Saab also announced that 3 prosecutors will investigate the deaths of military personnel and civilians during the US operation. He appealed to international organizations to take action beyond mere condemnation to secure Maduro's release. Meanwhile, Colombia's Foreign Minister Rosa Villavicencio warned that the country's military must be ready to defend national territory and sovereignty in case of a hypothetical US invasion following threats from Washington of a similar intervention. Let's listen in.
Pero en este caso, lo que uno ya detenido el presidente Maduro, lo que uno pide es juicio justo siempre.
Hemos dicho que todo país en el orden internacional tiene el derecho a su defensa, su legítima defensa, y nuestro ejército tiene por jefe al presidente de la República y su misión es defender la soberanía del país. Tendríamos que llegar, si llegase esa agresión, el ejército debe defender el territorio nacional y la soberanía del país.
All right, and joining me now in this discussion is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former diplomat and joins us from New Delhi. Thanks very much, Ambassador Sachdev, for joining me in this discussion. Ambassador, of course, reactions are coming in from leaders from across the world. How important do you think are these, given that Trump now has his eyes on Greenland and he's also moved, officials to that effect to come up with a plan or the options available for him to acquire resource-rich Greenland?
Thank you for having me. Successful from the point of Mr. Trump, the successful operation from his viewpoint to get hold of Nicolás Maduro ex-president and his wife for trial in the United States uh, has apparently emboldened President Trump. And he wants to build upon the momentum as well as his own MAGA base's heightened expectations. Therefore, uh, there is a certain flow of events, but I don't think the Greenland issue is comparable to Maduro issue. The two issues are entirely different. Even in case of Maduro, the United States did not occupy Venezuela. It prefers an indirect, uh, let's say, influence over the oil and other policies of Venezuela without change of regime or sovereignty. Here in Greenland, it's a different story. So it is the US wants to take over Greenland, which belongs to Denmark at the moment, and Denmark is a NATO ally, which has said from its prime minister onwards that Greenland is not for sale. So the issues are quite different. But having said that, uh, the arbiter remains the same, Mr. Trump, who has trampled over international law in getting hold of president of a sovereign country. So he might even decide to go further in northwardly direction instead of going south. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador Sachdev, first of all, I'd like to request you to kindly fix your screen. And then secondly, I'd like to come to my next question to you. Ambassador, where do you see the transatlantic alliance going from here? Because with the Trump eyeing Greenland, how important do you think is for the European Union leaders to come together and also work collaboratively with Trump in the event that he wants to go for dialogue and negotiations and not use a military force?
I think you raised two different issues, and one is about NATO, another one is about European Union. Both impinge upon the Greenland-related threats that President Trump and his administration has been bandying around for quite some time. Initially taken as a kind of an hyperbole, but after Venezuela hissed, you never know. So European Union as well as NATO, including Britain, have voiced concern about Greenland and United States threat to take it over. This would hopefully deter President Trump from outright takeover. He may like to negotiate it, and the negotiations could be either in terms of outright purchase, as Mr. The Foreign Secretary Marco Rubio has said, or it could involve some kind of bases at a level higher than currently permitted by NATO that United States might like to have, or partitioning the island itself with the strategic areas that United States needs to defend the Arctic and incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles, etc., being reluctantly handed over to the United States by Denmark over a long lease or something like that. So we need to watch this space. But I should say that faced with the Russian onslaught in Ukraine and cries of Ukraine to have a security shield, greater reluctance by United States in defending European continent, epitomized by the Greenland issue. I think European Union and NATO are in a non-enviable position. So let's see where it takes, but they would collectively plead with White House to not to do something dramatic and not to do something against the will of Denmark and Greenland.
All right, sure. Thanks for your comment on that, Ambassador. Would you continue to stay on with me? Now, viewers, Donald Trump has also shared new details of what he's calling an amazing and complex U.S. military achievement in Venezuela. He says no American troops were killed, though several were injured during the mission. Trump says that many people died in the operation, mostly Cubans, while the local Venezuelan media report says 23 Venezuelan troops also died, bringing the total to 53 military deaths along with 2 civilian women. The president said 152 aircraft took part in the operation and no Americans were killed. He praised the U.S. military as the most powerful and fearsome force on earth, saying no one comes close. Alright viewers, and moving ahead, now Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that Canadian oil will remain competitive even if Venezuela boosts output, flowing US efforts to remove Nicolás Maduro. Carney added that Canadian oil will be competitive because it is low risk and low cost, and proposed a carbon capture project in Alberta would make Canadian crude more appealing to environmentally conscious buyers. Let's listen in to Carney's statements.
From our perspective, the removal of an illegitimate, corrupt, repressive government or leader, Mr. Maduro, is welcome news. It creates the possibility for democratic transition in Venezuela. We very much support that. We're available to support that. And we urge that to happen in a peaceful transition. And that's the best prospect for greater prosperity for the Venezuelan people and to respect the will of the Venezuelan.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested that American companies are ready to invest billions in Venezuela's oil sector, prompting speculation about the impact on Canadian oil sands, a producer of similarly heavy crude. Okay, I request Ambassador Sachdev to join me back in this discussion here. Ambassador, do help us explain how the outputs of oil are now going to proceed with US takeover and American companies ready to invest in the Venezuelan oils. Where does Canadian oil export stand after this?
Canada exports mainly go to United States. And there is some concern that Alberta's heavy sands-based oil, which at minus 40 degrees most of the year, requires heating before being shipped to United States by pipeline, will become more expensive than Venezuela's. In any case, Venezuela is nowhere close to being optimizing its oil production, which used to be 3 million barrels a day till the beginning of this century, and now has fallen to 1 million barrel a day. So ramping it back up would require estimated $100 billion worth of investment, Most of it would be made by American companies. But having invested that kind of money, if Americans are ready to do that, then they would have obviously uh, an interest in getting the good return out of that. So instead of buying Canadian heavy oil, uh, which is expensive, they would rather have Venezuelan crude shipped to Texas, which is about the same distance as Canadian Alberta oil by pipeline to from Venezuela. So I think Mr. Carney may be trying to shore up the morale of Canadian oil producers, but the writing is on the wall.
Okay.
And unless United States does something drastic, uh, in fact, United States is actually an exporter of crude right now. So where is this extra crude going to go from Canada, from Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana? Remains to be asked. And it may therefore be prudent to guess that Mr. Trump will try to reduce the output from other major producers such as Russia and Iran to make space for extra crude from Venezuela and elsewhere in the new world.
Okay. And how does this affect the Canadian economy then, if its crude export is now under threat?
I think it'll be adversely impacted, as it is tariff war with the United States has jolted Canadian economy, and I believe oil exports were regarded as the savior of the bilateral relationship between the United States and Canada. Through the long pipeline that has been controverted. But it remains to be seen if Canada could find new buyers, including China and India, where the consumption is growing and is substantive. China is the largest importer of crude. India is the third largest importer of crude. So, put together, perhaps the Canadians would have to pivot towards Asia for buyers.
My final question to Ambassador, do you think that the extra crude that we're talking about here from Venezuela and Canada and the US, will buyers like India want to take a pivot if it gets cheaper oil from the West as compared to Russia?
I think this is an interesting question. We don't know, but many of the forecasters, including IEA, International Energy Agency, Standard & Poor's, and others, have been predicting that the oil prices for Brent would come down to something like $50 a barrel by the end of this year, which would be about 20% less than where they are now. So the oil is going to be a buyer's market, and as it appears, with about 4 million barrels extra floating around per day from a difference between excess production and consumption. I think this would entail, unless Mr. Trump wants to maintain very low crude prices, which I doubt, because shale gas and oil becomes non-competitive at such a low rate. So then he needs oil around $55 a barrel to be able to produce profitably from the shale gas and oil that has made United States a net exporter. So it's a very dynamic situation, and unless production is curbed elsewhere, there's every prospect that the oil prices are going to go deep south.
Yeah, okay, sure. Thanks very much. I think it's a subject for a longer discussion, but for now, we'd leave it at that, Ambassador Sachdev. And moving ahead, viewers, let's move to the news from Iran now, where massive protests have erupted, led by women opposing strict gender laws and mandatory hijab rules, part of a wider movement for freedom and human rights. Demonstrations have intensified following decades of repression and enforcement by morality police and security forces. The roots of this unrest stretch back to Iran's history. Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi ruled until 1979, modernizing and westernizing the country, but also facing rising authoritarianism and religious opposition. Public protests eventually forced him to exile, ending the monarchy. Ayatollah Khomeini then assumed power, establishing the Islamic Republic with clerical rule. Since the revolution, the regime has implemented strict gender laws using the hijab and legal restrictions to consolidate state authority, control women's autonomy, and maintain a patriarchal social order. These historical and ideological foundations continue to fuel today's widespread protests. I now request Lieutenant Colonel retired Himanshi Singh to join me in the discussion here. She is a Defense and International Relations Analyst and joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel, for joining me in this discussion. What do you make of the Iran protests and women endeavoring to assert their freedom, their identity in the backdrop of these protests?
As a defense and geopolitical analyst, let me be very clear. What we are witnessing today in Iran is not a temporary unrest, but it is a structural, crisis of state. So what we had earlier seen was like in 2022, there were protests about ideology like women, life, freedom. But in the current times, the unrest is deeply economic, and it is uniting the working class and the urban middle class. See, when bread becomes unaffordable, ideology stops working. And these protests, they are nationwide because working class is angry. The people who are even in business, they are angry. So middle class and the upper class is already very angry. And this is the most dangerous combination for any regime. As we are seeing, there's external pressure, which is from the US side, there's regional isolation, there are economic sanctions that leaves Tehran with limited options. So when regime feels encircled and they're hardened internally, it is difficult for a regime to survive. Earlier, see, Tehran was known as the Paris of East. It had a cosmo culture. Women could vote till 1979, and it was granted in 1963. They could attend university and they could choose to wear Western clothing. Jeans were also allowed. So there was no mandatory hijab. So people are used to this kind of culture where alcohol was legal, music and cinema thrived. What with Islamic regime coming in, socially liberal elite were curbed, and rural people in Iran, they were conservative and they saw westernized as morally correct. So what we see, first of all, women are rising, they're cutting their hair, they're shunting hijab. With Ayatollah Khomeini becoming old, now there is a pressure that who is the uncontested successor of Ayatollah Khomeini. IRGC is trying to grab the power, but there is no face who can actually take over this cleric state. So things are very, very serious. And though Iran has some supporters in the Muslim world, it has the backing of Russia and China. It is a partner to Russia. They have supplied them drones during this Ukraine war. So it is not that Iran is a very, very weak state, but yes, when economy falls and the people come on a road to protest, then things become very serious, because it is not just about the military. You need people to be with you, and when the food security is not there, then any regime can collapse. Kruti.
All right. Do you think Iran could, is it in a position to rewrite a civilizational history once again? There was a time when it was Persia and then Iran and then New Iran, and there are rampant protests. There were waves of de-Islamization, and now, of course, women rising, like you said, to assert their identities and freedoms. Where does Iran really stand right now?
See, Iran, as I said, it's at a free fall of its economy. There is a leadership vacuum, and there is a relentless pressure, and especially women become 50% of your human resource. So if that human resource is not ready to cooperate, and normal people are on street, it becomes a national security threat. See, in 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini, he assumed power, it was not an overnight thing. It was a strategic dismantling of the monarchy. He had spent 14 years in exile, sometime in Iraq and then France. From there, he started preaching the Islamic law, and then he's returned to power after the Shah left. So things were very, very progressive in Iran, but later on, when they started, putting women under pressure, under the Waqf Fakir and other things, so a class of women who is already educated, who knows her rights, is put behind hijab, then, the entire unsettling happens within the human hearts. So that is coming out in open. Moreover, because of the UN sanctions, the economy has gone down. Moreover, US CIA also has some hand in creating this unrest. Earlier in June, we had seen Israel having cleared their all head of states, killing them. And constant state of war has made people realize that this is not what they want. Everyone wants economic security. People want to work. People want good medical facility. People want good infrastructure, which is falling apart in Iran. And moreover, with US putting pressures on Iran, there's isolation. They cannot sell off their oil openly in the market. There are few countries which are buying oil. So people, they don't want morality, they want bread, they want job security. So if that is not happening, so I think it is a very, very difficult state for Iran to survive as of now. There will be a regime change, but who is next? That is the question. Because if Khamenei goes out, who comes in? If IRGC grabs the power, we will again be seeing the same sort of civil war, because they will try to curb this protest through power. And when people, they protest and they are curbed through power, then a civil war kind of state starts, which nobody wants in the world at this time, because world is already, going through a lot of crisis. So I think the regime has to actually leave the moral policing. It will double down on the protesters, because the Ayatollah Khamenei has said that the state must listen to people, but protesters must be taught a lesson. So it already shows that there is some sort of crisis happening.
Right.
So let's
all right, we'll leave it at that.
Happens.
This discussion is, of course, an unending one, needs a lot of time. But let's move on now, Lieutenant Colonel Singh. Viewers, let's also tell you that in Bangladesh, a 25-year-old Hindu man, Mithun Sarkar, died after jumping into a canal to escape a mob chasing him over theft suspicion. His body was recovered by police on Tuesday afternoon. Incident is part of a sharp rise in attacks targeting religious minorities ahead of Bangladesh's first parliamentary elections since the 2024 uprising. In recent days, a Hindu businessman was shot dead, a grocery store owner was killed with a sharp weapon, and another man was brutally attacked and set on fire. Human rights groups report at least 51 targeted incidents in December alone. including 10 murders, along with cases of arson, rape and looting. Observers warn that these attacks reflect systemic failures to protect vulnerable citizens and growing communal tensions as the country prepares to vote on February 12. I request Lieutenant Colonel Singh to join me back in the discussion here. Himanshu Singh, what do you see? This is, I believe, the fourth such attack in about 3 weeks' time in Bangladesh on a Hindu minority there. What action is really needed for the international community to stop the ethnic cleansing, or at least the move towards it, of minorities, particularly Hindus in Bangladesh?
Kriti, it is very, very sad, disturbing and alarming. It is not an isolated event. It follows death of another Hindu, and the entire world is quiet about it. And there is so much of fear when somebody else dies. But when a Hindu dies, let me be very clear on your channel, when a Hindu dies, then everybody is quiet. Now, when mob, it is giving justice to people on the pretext of that he has stolen something, I think when victims are repeatedly belong to the same minority, so it is a pattern of vulnerability. Bangladesh is facing an institutional vacuum. The elections are going to happen. The government, which is a caretaker government, is absolutely mum about it. No justice is being given to the Hindu minorities. I think from security point of view, when minorities become a soft target due to political transitions and when they are defenseless, these things happen. And these are also resulting in the strained relationship between India and Bangladesh. So they actually strain diplomatic ties. India is, just terming these as worrisome, but however, no action from Indian side is being taken. Nobody has ever spoken about it in UN Council also. So I think we are not looking at, a turmoil inside Bangladesh. We are seeing this lawlessness, which is, very worrisome for India also. Bangladesh has been not just a neighbor, it is a strategic partner. So I think if we just consider it as a moral failure of a government, I think it's a sad thing. It's a diplomatic liability on countries next to, Bangladesh to take care, because you cannot eliminate minorities and claim internal security. The state without internal stability becomes vulnerable to external pressure. And this is how this security erosion begins. So it is not with coups, it is not with other things, but normalized lawlessness. The army is not doing anything because the mob is attacking army also. So if Bangladesh has to, come back to a normal state, it has to decisively act on the mob violence and stop being an exception. It is a rich cultural state.
Sure.
But if
all right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Singh, for joining and for sharing your opinion. And with that, viewers, we're now going to proceed. Now, Lenovo has announced a strategic partnership with NVIDIA to speed up the deployment of AI data centers. At the same time, company also introduced Kira, which is a personal AI platform designed to work across Lenovo and Motorola devices. It made the announcement at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, while also showcasing an AI platform, concept devices, and the first foldable smartphone under its Motorola brand. CEO Young also unveiled Kira, a personal AI system designed to work across Lenovo and Motorola PCs, phones, tablets, and wearables, even in the background. Lenovo also showcased concept AI glasses, joining Alibaba and Samsung Electronics in the sector, and an AI assistant wearable device it is developing under Project Maxwell that will offer the wearer real time. And with that small piece of news from technology, we will wrap up this edition of the World Report on NewsX World. But keep watching for all international news and updates.